one reason why I think I have been a good music supervisor is because I have had the experience of being an actor, and I know what it's like to submit yourself for something and be like, what the fuck? Why didn't I hear back? I'm perfect for that. Like, or I delivered, like I worked so hard on that. And like, I did everything that they asked for. And, they've said in the past that they love my work and they're thinking of me for the next thing. Like, I've literally been told that so many times as an actor that like, I know what it's like for composers, I know what it's like for artists. Like it's, when you get that thing, it's great, but the process is, there is a lot of rejection and it can be kind of exhausting, and it can be also just like confusing, mentally being like, wait a second, like they said that they really liked it. It's like, okay, well, what you're not seeing is like the 20 people on my Zoom that I have to present this thing to, and all the comments back and forth. Oh, that reminds me of this band. Like, didn't we do that already? Or, that's too old. I think that that's speaking to like a different demographic. We really want it to feel new. Or, there's so many. And it's so similar, like with acting, you have like directors, you have producers, you have the network execs, like it's really not dissimilar. So that's one thing too. I would just say, like, for artists, like we're rooting for artists. We're rooting for composers. Like I like to say I work in the music industry, not in the advertising industry. I want to make artists successful. Like I want to make them money. I want them to be able to keep making their art.
What's going on? Welcome to the New Music Business Podcast. I'm your host, Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business, the book. Today, my guest is Winslow Bright. She is a music supervisor or music producer at Search Party Music. They primarily put music in commercials, and they do really big campaigns. They do Sephora, Beyond Burger, Calvin Klein, that commercial that featured Bieber and SZA and Lil Nas X. That was them. They do Stella, Tiffany, Mini Coupe. I mean, you name it. They've done these commercials. And so we talk about what that job is all about and how they decide what songs are going to get placed and how the business works around it, communicating with the ad agency, communicating with the sync licensing companies, the sync agents, the labels, the publishers, working with the artists, talking about cover songs, how covers get placed, how we cover in this one, which I don't think we've really talked much about in the past, original music and how that gets composed and scored for commercials and who those people are and where they come from. Winslow has an interesting background. She is an actress and a musician as well, and currently working as both. She's currently in a Shonda Rhimes show that is coming out called Inventing Anna, which is really cool and encouraging to see when you have an artist working on the business side, bringing that artist empathy. She talks about that. I encourage you to stick around to the end of the interview where she talks about that. She talks about wearing both hats, how to manage all different sides of everything she's doing, wearing all the different hats as an actress, as a musician, as a business professional, working in music supervision, what it's like, and how all that works. And I know for so many of you who are listening who are the multi-hyphenate like myself, this is going to be very helpful for you to hear. So stick around to the very end of the interview when she gets into that. As always, please like, subscribe, follow this show however you're listening to this right now. Like it, follow it, subscribe, leave a comment. If you're on YouTube, please leave a 5-star review. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you can, even if you're not listening there, just head over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. That's super helpful. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Ari Herstand. You can find the show and everything we're doing on the Ari's Take side at Ari's Take on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We're now on TikTok. Check us out on TikTok at aris.take on TikTok. Visit aristake.com, sign up for that email list. The email list is the most valuable thing that you could be a part of because that is when we are going to let you know about all new comparison articles that we release, everything that I'm writing about. I send it out to the email list first, all new episodes, all of that stuff. So check it out. All right, let's kick into the show. Winslow Bright, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So where are you? I'm assuming you're in LA, right?
I'm in New York City, so sorry.
Oh. You're in New York.
No, I'm in New York. I was literally about to say, Sorry if you hear like a beeping truck or like
Yeah.
my neighbor's kids' footsteps or
No, that's true. That's pretty
it was
common.
as quiet as it could ever be, but yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about the commercial side of music supervision with you. And so if you could actually set up kind of what you do specifically as the music supervisor. I know that you're kind of the head of the kind of the ad division. But like, give people a little background on like what you do with music supervision, specifically at Search Party Music, what Search Party is, all of that. Set it up, and then we'll dig into it.
Perfect. So, as the head of the advertising department, my job is to oversee all of the ad and brand work that we do, whether that's direct to brand, whether that's with advertising agencies, whether that's brought in through a production company. I really, bird's eye view, oversee all of the sort of work that comes in under that umbrella and either distribute the work accordingly to the other supervisors and producers on our team, or I also produce and supervise as well. It's funny, in advertising, they call it a music producer. In film and TV, they call it a music supervisor. It's honestly the same thing. But I think, with advertising, the people who are running jobs, both at an agency and then at production companies, are always referred to as producers, or in edit houses, you have producers who oversee the editors. So the overseeing role is a producer, whereas, it's just referred to as a music supervisor in film and TV. It's the same. It's interchangeable. It's just like an industry difference in terms of terminology. So yeah, my job is to partially bring in work, foster relationships with agencies, with creative directors, with brands directly, again, with directors and production companies. And then, like I said, distribute that work, oversee how my team is producing, what our communication is like with the clients and that kind of a thing.
Cool. So, set it up in terms of when do you get involved in a project? When does Search Party get involved? And so let's use a specific example. So, Tiffany Jewelry. I know you worked on that project, or one of them. Tiffany, how does that work? They come to Search Party and say, "Hey, we have this concept for this commercial. Here's what it is. Can you help us get the music?" Or what? Step me through that relationship and how that actually goes down.
So every job is so different. At Search Party, we don't have in-house composers. We work with composers all on a freelance basis. I saw that you had Seth Callan on the show, and Paul from Sephora, who he manages, is a super close friend, amazing composer. He's literally in a mix session for a job that I'm working on right now, and has been working day and night on this project with us. So, we call on people when it comes to original music. We call on people on a freelance basis based on what the brief is for the job and what their skill set is, and really call on our Rolodex of people, whether it's a advertising composer that's their go-to field, or whether that's a film composer or a band, or an artist. We really just try to find the right people for the job. With supervision,
and where do you find these people?
It can be Search Party was founded, I think, maybe 15 years ago by Randall Poster. So he is a very renowned music supervisor. He's most notably known for having done all of Wes Anderson's films. He's done every Scorsese project since The Aviator. Yes. So he started getting reached out to a lot by people going, "I want Wes Anderson's music supervisor for my ad." And Wes was doing, I think, but Wes at the time was doing some ads. So he had done he was working on, I think, American Express, and he was doing a Hyundai ad maybe. And he was getting approached a lot about ads and was actually engaging on them. And so it felt natural for Randy to say, okay, here's where things are expanding. So he started Search Party then. So, we have built relationships with composers just over the years. Sometimes it's people who reach out to me and I listen and, maybe try them on something that I feel like I can take a risk on for a new person and develop a relationship. Sometimes it's somebody saying, another composer. I mean, the community of composers, I feel like, who work on these projects is pretty tight. They're always asking each other. I'm actually in like a Facebook group with composers that the composers invited me into, I think just for perspective. Because sometimes they'll talk about different budgets or how people approach the terms. And so yeah, it's like sometimes a composer will reach out to me and say, hey, I have a friend who's really amazing, you should engage.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And
I
speaking
think
of,
I kind of went off, but back to where we got.
yeah, no, it's perfect, and that's great.
Go
And
ahead.
that's actually a great tip for any aspiring composer for ads. Check out those Facebook groups. That's a good tip. What do budgets look like for a composer for original music for these kinds of projects? And to set that up, I do like how on the Search Party website you've split up the kinds of ads that you do as original music, licensed, and re-record, and we're going to cover all three topics. And so
Great.
let's start on the original music side. You have a composer. What do the budgets look like for that kind of a project, just for the composer, really?
Well, so usually with an agency, if we're engaged by an advertising agency, either they will say, okay, we want to work with Search Party on this project, or they might have a client that mandates that they like kind of triple bid it, where they have 3 different companies put up basically put up estimates saying, pardon me, this is what we'll charge for the demo fee, this is what we'll charge for like the full up like usage fee. So really just depends on the job in terms of how we get started, I suppose. Oftentimes it could be like Search Party is demoing on something and another company is demoing on something. We try to avoid that. It's not
What
fun.
does demoing on something mean?
So oftentimes an agency will give you a demo budget where they'll say, okay, maybe we have $3,000 and we want to hear 10 options for our Nissan campaign. And I'm just making up numbers, but people will say we have a smaller budget just for creating the music. So, as a music company, you say, okay, well, I have, again, just as an example, $3,000 and the client wants to hear 10 different options. So that means really at max, I can pay people, if they have to hear 3,000 divided by 10, I can pay people $300 for the demo. And usually that's like a 30-second spot or maybe a 60-second spot. So what we do is we, engage people for a certain rate. Maybe if we're getting composers who work a lot in advertising, it might be one rate. If they're saying, well, we want to engage a few advertising composers, but we also want to engage like 1 or 2 film and TV composers, we want to engage Carter Burwell. So we're going to have a separate fee for him or something. We present those options and then basically we have a whole back and forth of, okay, the creatives like these maybe 3 options. We want to continue to revise them. Or you know what, that direction is totally wrong, or we just didn't hit the mark the first time around. We need to go back and do new additional options. And then usually there's like a fee that if you, for lack of a better word, win the job, then that's like the usage fee basically. So it can be honestly such a range. If you're working on something that's a online only campaign where maybe you just have like one composer demoing on something, it can be like a few $1,000s. And if it's something where it's like a huge Super Bowl original music ad campaign, it could be $100,000. It really
just for the composer
is like such a it depends on the composer.
Yeah.
So
okay.
it
Cool.
depends. I mean, somebody like a really big film and TV composer, if you loop them in to do original score for an ad, could be $100,000. Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
So it's a huge, I mean, again, that's got to be somebody who's carrying a really heavy weight, but it is a really big range, and it depends on the client. It depends on the usage. So when we go out for an advertisement for a whether it's a search for Supervision or whether it's engaging a composer, basically what we usually need to know is obviously who's the client, who's the agency, but
Mm-hmm.
where is the spot going to live? Is it going to live on broadcast? Is it going to live on digital only? Is it going to live on social only? Where are they pushing paid media for internet? Is it going to be US only, like geo-gated to the US? Are they like pushing paid all over the world? Is it only going to be on like Hulu streaming or something? So, the streaming thing is often still covered under all internet usage. I wouldn't be surprised if sometimes people will ask, like, can you specify, does that include streaming or does that just include like YouTube pre-roll and things like that? But those are all conversations that we have to have. I think that when people think about supervisors, they often just think about, this person just gets to pick music. And I wish that was my job. But so much of it is like the business side of just like negotiating, like, what are the terms? How long is this going to live? Okay, well, if you really want to use this Elton John song, frankly, like it's going to be X amount of money for 1 year, but you have half that budget. So what if we dock it down to 6 months? Do you really need the full year? Or what if we do the 6 months with an option to renew if the commercial's doing really well and it's, really performing and you're seeing a difference based on the fact that you licensed that song and really put forward the money to do that.
And
so,
you're explaining this to, sorry to cut you off, but you're explaining this to the client. So like I'm assuming the ad agency that is putting the whole project together. So you're explaining this to the client,
right?
But that's based on what, maybe if you use Elton John as the example, based on what Elton John's publishing company and the label for that song.
Right.
So whether it's I saw that I think it was maybe was
Rocket
it
Man?
yours? Oh, it was Rocket Man. That was in one of the spots that you did. Right. That's right. I saw that.
Yeah.
So that's what they're dictating to you, saying it's going to be X amount for 1 year, X amount for 6 months. Then you take that information and you go to them. And so you're kind of the middle person between the two. Is that kind
exactly.
of the deal? Okay.
Exactly. So we are both like the creative and the negotiate. Well, we are one step in the creative, right? So at the agency, there are creative directors, there's executive creative directors. You also have like the director who directs the spot if they are, involved in the music conversations. And then you have our taste and our 2 cents and our kind of filter as well, and our interpretation of what you're looking for the music to do. And then we also wear the hat of negotiator. So we'll work with the agency to determine what their terms are and what their ideal budget is. And then we go to, for Elton John, we go to Universal Music and we go to Universal Music Publishing and we negotiate separately with those 2 parties. And, we have discussions about what's needed in the terms, maybe what could be let go. And usually not a lot could be let go. It really just depends. Usually like there's already media buy in place and people know what they need. But again, when you have creative that's so baked around a song, sometimes people are willing to shift things to see how things are working. And then obviously they go back to, Elton John's camp and Bernie Taupin's camp, and they have those conversations about, about pricing and about who the brand is. And, a good example even would be like Elton was releasing a book, his book around the time of the Walmart campaign that we worked on. And like, those are conversations that we had to talk about because his book is called Rocket Man.
Right.
And we licensed Rocket Man. And it was, it was like, okay, his camp had to decide, like, does that, where is his book being sold? Where is his book being pushed? Is his book being pushed on Amazon in a way that having Rocket Man in a Walmart campaign, would be conflicting? Like those are all things that like, obviously those people that those camps are thinking about.
And just to clarify for the people listening to this that may not understand the business as intimately, just to clarify, when you say we had to negotiate with Elton John's camp publishing, Bernie Taupin's publishing as well, because they wrote the song together, they each have their own publishing company. That's on the publishing side. So you have to negotiate with their publishing companies, each of them, And then you go on, because you
Exactly.
said Universal Records controls the sound recording. Then once you've negotiated the publishing, you head over to Universal Records to negotiate the actual recording of it. And for people that don't realize,
Hmm.
like that's a thing. And I know we'll get into this in a little bit, but you license a lot of cover songs too. And when you do that, you have to
Totally.
negotiate whoever represents the publishing of who wrote the song, and which may be somebody different who actually recorded the song. So that's why you're going to both sides. Now, is it typically a 50-50 split on the sound recording side and the publishing side? Is that what you're seeing these days?
Well, I mean, it's just, yes. I mean, there are a lot of like, I think that there are a lot of side conversations that happen. Like when we approach, hey, like I was working on something this week where the producer was like, oh, well, do you think that the master is going to agree with the publishing? Because I had just gotten off the phone with the label and I was like, okay,
Mhm.
I think this is the way it's going to go. And I was like, yeah, they're going to call each other. Like as soon as I got off the phone, he called, like the label called the publisher for sure.
Sure. Sure.
Like that it was a situation where the band wrote the song. There's
Okay.
no other parties. So, the writers are the band is the artist.
Mhm.
It's different when you have, a Migos song and Drake is a writer on it and Drake has a verse on it.
Mhm.
Then that starts to get like more complicated because they might be okay with one fee.
Mm.
But if Drake is involved, it might be like, okay, well, if you're using the Drake verse, then you're basically using a Drake song. So the fees could be different. And that could
Mm.
be on the master side or on the publishing side, really probably depending on the song or what he felt like he contributed, potentially more so on the master.
Sure.
But, if you say like, we're not going to use the piece of the song that maybe has the sample, like it might be a little bit easier because yes, he's a writer, but you're not using
Sure.
his, contribution and what
Sure.
to him would carry the weight of, the price and the popularity from
Sure. No,
the
that makes
Drake
sense.
perspective of the song.
Are there most favored nations clauses in these contracts? Meaning, if the label agrees to $50,000, then the publisher will say, "We'll do whatever the label says." So if they say 50,000, that's what we're gonna do. You go negotiate with them, and we'll just agree to whatever they say. Does that happen?
100% all the time.
Okay.
MFN isn't like
Okay.
everything. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Generally speaking, there's like always MFN unless the only time I would say there's not is if it's a cover,
Mm,
or maybe if the writers are so, so famous and
mhm.
the artist maybe wasn't as well known. And
Mhm.
maybe that was like the biggest hit for the artist, but the writer has written, if I think about people like from like really big writers from like the 60s, they wrote so many hits that like maybe was a one hit for an artist. And that's like it is their song, but the writer gets licensed so much because they've written so many hits. So they're used to seeing like really big fees, but for that one artist, like they might make a concession to try to get it over the line to get that opportunity because the song isn't licensed that much. So
Gotcha.
that's kind of like that's way more rare. It would really
Sure.
more frequently be with a re-record where it's like, this is a much less yeah, I don't know if you were licensing like What the World Needs Now and you didn't want to
Mhm.
use Jackie DeShannon's version, you wanted to use one by like a up and coming artist on like an indie label, like
Mhm.
I'm not I'm not going to grant MFN to the indie artist who isn't very well known
Mhm.
with a copyright that is something as highly regarded and globally well known as What the World
Sure.
Needs Now.
Sure.
So obviously we try to be fair to the
Yep.
artists and from the supervisor standpoint and make sure that everybody is getting the fee that they deserve
Mhm.
and everything. But that's just like a one area where MFN just really doesn't come into play
Sure. So
just because it's so different.
let's jump into re-records, cover songs that you're
Yeah.
placing. What's the process typically with that? So let's talk about like the Daydream cover by M Ward. You
Okay.
place in a Stella commercial. How did that go down, or what is the process of this? Did you go to M Ward and Aaliyah Farah and say, okay, we want you to record this song, this redo Daydream, and it's going to be for a Stella commercial, or did they already have it out and you're like, oh man, this is perfect for the spot? How does that go down typically?
Yeah. So in that case, we got briefed on the Stella job like maybe in February of last year before like the world really shut down.
Sure.
And so when they were initially briefing us on the spot, they knew that they wanted to use a song that spoke to escapism. And they basically were like, how can we create this feeling of, no matter where you are in the world, no matter where you are in the US, kind of no matter what time of day, like if you can get a Stella out of the fridge and like just sit down for a minute, you can get like a breath of fresh air and feel a little bit of an escape, right? So that was their brief in February. And then like everything obviously changed. And the job stayed alive because the brief almost began to feel even more relevant as time passed, since people weren't able to leave their homes and everything. But it just got a little bit more complicated because we couldn't be encouraging people to like have a party or, to gather. So like our, lyrical content that we include, or that we were trying to sort of find the right message of, had to be pretty specific, and had to not, encourage things that were not safe at the time. So at Search Party, we were doing tons of internal polls. We were doing searches. So when we do music searches, we take all those terms that I was talking about earlier, and we reach out to our label friends, our publishing friends. In this case, it was really just publishing because we knew we wanted to do a re-record, and we were reaching out and everything. And then we, landed on Daydream because of just like the nature of the lyrics. And I think it allowed you to feel that sense of escapism in a really personal way, which is really what the spot ended up speaking to. And they knew that they wanted to do a cover. So they knew that they wanted to engage an artist. They just didn't really know at the time who they wanted to work with. So they had sent us some references of like just different songs that they liked in terms of instrumentation and tonality. And we basically put many decks together of artists we thought were a great fit, artists that we thought would be interested in the project. Simultaneously, while we're coming up with those creative ideas, we're also calling either their managers or the label and saying, hey, are they around? Would they be interested? I mean, the good thing at the time was that everyone was around.
Right.
So we were able to really like, get creative. But, not every artist wants to do a cover. Some artists are not interested in that, or some artists, aren't interested in brand work, or also like doing custom work for an ad is relentless. Like anybody who tells you it's not is, I don't know, a liar.
Right.
There's so many rounds, there's so many cooks, there's so many,
for the majority,
it's a challenge.
Right. For the majority of the re-records that you do, this one sounds like this was done to the spot. Like you settled on the Daydream, the 1966 song, I think is Lovin' Spoonful, I believe is like the original artist. Maybe it's a one-hit one. I'd never heard of them before, but you settled on the song, and then you took this to, then did you put it out and say, hey, who wants to do this? Or did you go to M Ward and be like, hey, do you want to record this at the spot? Or how did that go down?
Yeah, so we approached several artists and talked to their camps and said, here are the boards for the spot. Here's the general concept. We had not shot yet, and we needed to shoot to the song because everybody's singing on the spot.
Right.
So we had to have the song locked, the tempo locked, the instrumentation all pretty much locked. You can add to it, but you really can't change the tempo if you have people singing on camera. I mean, they have an earwigs and they're singing to like what they're hearing, in terms of the production. So yeah, we approached his camp. He was luckily available and interested. He really liked, the original Lovin' Spoonful song, and wanted to do it. So he did, I think maybe 2 or 3 different like passes at it with a little bit of a different approach in each. And then landed on like the kind of the bones of the final direction that we went in. And then, we had a back and forth with our creative team, explaining different things that they wanted to hear, or maybe things that they were not certain elements maybe they weren't responding to, that maybe they wanted to try to do something else with. And then we worked with the production company really closely so that they had all of the stems and the assets to the song so that they could be playing with that in playback while they were live. I mean, Stella was the first campaign to be granted a permit to shoot in San Francisco after this, or like on the, the downward slope of the stay-at-home order there.
Mm-hmm.
So everything was very socially distant and extremely careful and all of these things. They shot outside. It was all like very individualized. They shot like in the celebrities' homes. I think the director was like zooming in. So, I mean, a lot of like remote moving pieces. And then we ended up actually, so they tried to record the actors live on set to get those vocals. We tried doing that, and then it didn't quite work. So Aaliyah's voice actually became like the lead actor's voice. And then we ended up doing a bunch of like vocal ADR, where we had different vocalists like match what they were seeing on, once we had a take, like once we had a cut, we ended up doing like vocal ADR where we just had people, singing to the timing of the actors. Even though they were singing to our song, it's just, it was live and it was like things were moving. And
are there any instances
that was the way that went down.
Yeah. Are there any instances, because it seems like most of your re-records are done that way. I mean, I was looking at it was the Tiffany commercial with Al Fanning, A$AP Ferg for Moon River, and there was a big song and dance number where everybody's there and Al is singing, and right, and that was
crazy.
That was really fun. It looked crazy. It looked like that would have been quite a production. But are there instances where you take an existing cover? Because I know that there are a lot of, especially independent artists out there who have covers of songs that they're like, man, I think this would be really great to get placed, and they see covers getting licensed for big spots. Like, have you ever used an existing cover?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like anytime where there's like an on-camera vocal element, like we're generally having to create it because the actors are singing. But yeah, we get pitch covers all the time. And then it'll come up where, Tiffany might say, I really want to license, I don't know, a Beatles song. And they say, what can you see what covers exist of All You Need Is Love? Like maybe something is out there. Maybe we don't need to commission it. Maybe the perfect thing is there. Cool. So yeah, we absolutely look for it, and we absolutely like accept submissions in that way. It's usually, though, I would say either we have a brief that's like so wide open where we don't have a set budget, and somebody can be like, where the master owner, the label can say, hey, my artist has a cover of All You Need Is Love. Like it hits the brief perfectly. Or it's where we say, okay, it's kind of wide open and we can go look for, covers of that. I think where it gets a little bit tricky is if it's a cover, the master, like if you're dealing with an independent sync licensing company, the master won't know the price of the publishing. So if they say, my artist, Grace Smith, has this amazing cover of All You Need Is Love, and they pitch it, they can't tell me what that's going to cost. They can only tell me what it's going to cost from their end. They can say, we'd license this master for $30,000, but they have no idea what the Beatles will say for a year, for All Media, for Tiffany. Like they just don't have that gauge. So that's where it gets like a little bit trickier, for them to be pitching it. It really has to be like, this is a creative, like the doors are wide open, like pitch whatever you think will work,
Sure. And that makes a lot of sense. Is like, I don't think any independent artist or sync agent is going to expect that their cover is going, that's where MFN wouldn't necessarily make sense, where it's like they wouldn't expect that their song, their recording is worth what Lennon and McCartney's publishing is going to ask for that side. So that's a great example. Speaking of licensing, with existing songs, not necessarily covers, I'm curious how you guys approach the licenses, specifically of lesser known artists, ideally maybe independent artists or ones that are coming through sync licensing companies, sync agents, and how that goes. Like I know you used a song for a Sephora commercial, Duran Jones, in the indications, You and Me, I believe he's independent. So when you get a brief from like a Sephora or something like that, what's the process like of finding the perfect song for that? And do you start with budget and it's like, well, the budget is a bit smaller, so let's go to the licensing companies versus the labels, or what's your process there?
That's exactly it. So
Okay.
we usually get, sometimes we'll be brought in early if people are really thinking about music and looking for music to, I guess, play more of a character or a role in the ad. We always like to be brought on as early as possible. I think because, you can wait so long for music, like you can get an edit together and you can get sound design together and you could still not have music. You could wait till the last minute. And I think that's not a fun place for anyone to be. It's not a creative place for anyone to be. So we always like to be brought on as early as possible, even before the shoot, if possible. But yeah, so an agency will come to us, or whoever the client is comes to us and says, we have this Sephora campaign. This is the creative. This is what we're looking for from the music. And a lot of our job is interpreting, their brief to us in a musical way. So they might say, we want it to feel really nostalgic. We want it to feel really warm. We want it to feel like it could be something that is played at your grandmother's house, but like a, hip, cool grandmother. We want it to feel, organic, but not too, that doesn't necessarily mean singer songwriter. So we take all of that and figure out, what does that musically mean? Does that mean soul? Does that mean Duran Jones? Does that actually mean folk music? Like, what does that mean based on the brand, based on the brief, all those things.
Cool.
And then we look at the terms. So terms like where is it going to live? How long is it going to live there? All of that, and the budget. Because, if you have a $30,000 budget, but it's only a month of use, okay, that's one thing. But if you have a $30,000 budget and it's a year of use, that's a totally different thing, right?
Yes.
So we take that we take all that into consideration, and we say, okay, who are the appropriate parties that have music that fit this brief and this budget? And if it's something that's lower, then, I will say, like, even if we have a really big budget, we don't only go to the majors, like, unless it's like, I need something that is extremely recognizable, that that 99.9% of people know, that everybody knows the words to. Okay, well, then you're going to more specific people. Yep. But if it's just like, we have a really great budget, we just want the best song, like, we don't stop at the majors. Like, we go across the board. There's so many independent licensing companies, or, managers direct, who represent amazing music. And where we can, we want to be in a place of discovery and share, and also sharing, right? Yeah. Sharing that, discovery with the masses, if we can. So we take that brief and that budget, and we send out actual searches. So we usually, I would say, if we get briefed on a Monday, we would probably try to get something back to our client by Wednesday as like an average. We can move way faster or way slower, but that's like average. And
2 days.
Sometimes, and sometimes that's fast, right? You're saying that's
crazy.
Fast?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, because we've done it faster. And then sometimes it depends, like, if the client is in the edit and like editor on standby, and if they're like in the room with them, it's obviously way easier if they just go through things together and fly it in, if the edit's continuing to change, and if they want to kind of talk about it in real time. But I had a client last week who was like, we are out of edit, we're only in finishing, like they were doing CGI on something, and they were like, we can only work with a company that puts things to picture. So I edit, my whole team edits. And I think we put like 200 songs to picture in the course of like 5 days. It was crazy like insane. But it was like, so many things worked with this spot. And they were like, we have like 1 week to work on this. We're shipping. And like it was one of those things where like they'd been doing original music for months. And then the client all of a sudden went, why don't we get a licensed song? And they were like 2 weeks away from like their final day, their ship day. And
Sure.
they were sort of like, really? Months later, you're just now telling us this, trying to sort of get a temperature check. Is this real? And then I got the call that was like, no, this is real. Okay, we're going.
Yeah.
And so it was just like fast and furious. But I will say, like, I personally think for anyone who wants to get into music supervision, or honestly, even for some people pitching, it's really helpful, I find, if you can edit to picture, even just for perspective. Like, there are plenty of times where I put something to picture and then I'm like, or I try, I should say, to put something to picture and I'm like, this just is not working. It's like putting like a square peg in a round hole. It's just like, it felt, when I just kind of teed it up in just like QuickTime and Finder and was watching it together, it felt right. But because of the way that the edit is, it has to hit on X beat. And I just can't, with the tempo of the music or whatever it is, get it to do that. Or the lyric doesn't get to doesn't get far enough along to where you get the message to where this moment happens or what. And, it's an old song from 1957 and there's no instrumental.
Yeah,
so it's, if you're working with really new songs, that's different because usually there's stems available. There's like, oftentimes they'll have like a TV track and instrumental like on hand. And then if you go to mix, like, you can usually get stems just for mixing purposes, like just to get the levels right. But yeah, so it can be really, really quick like that. So
that's very eye-opening at how quick the turnaround time is and what it takes from your side of it. Now, that's really great advice because I know there are a lot of people listening to this and I get these questions all the time of how do I become a music supervisor? How do I get this job? This sounds amazing. Now, you have a really interesting background as a musician, as an actress, where you're currently still both. How did you get into this job? How did you get this job? And give me a little background on that.
Yeah, so I grew up in Dallas, and when I was growing up, I did like tons of commercial. My mom stuck us all into like print modeling when we were really little. I think she was like, "You guys are cute. This might help pay for your college. Do it until you hate it." And I just liked it. All of my siblings, well, not all my sisters, I have a brother too, who followed my dad's path in terms of career, but all my sisters kind of all work in entertainment and media. My oldest sister is a lawyer at Netflix. My other sister works in animation development. My little sister is a social media marketing manager. So like we're all kind of like in that world, I think. And I think it's because my mom had kind of stuck us in this. So anyways, I grew up doing a lot of commercials. And then I was putting myself on tape, literal physical VHS tape that would be quote unquote sent to LA. And I swear to God, it was just like dumped into a dumpster every time I would do it. And so I actually, I ended up, when I was a freshman in high school, I ended up going out to LA for a pilot season. I had known a lot of people who had gone. And I mean, I had seen a lot of people have success. And so I was sort of like, I'll regret it if I don't try to also, do that. And I did. And I was like, so miserable. It was so miserable. I had no friends. And I went from like being very involved in a public high school and like doing I was like in video tech, and I was a cheerleader, and I was in the musicals, and I was like on student council, and then I had like no friends, and it was really.
Were you out here for that whole spring? And did you have an agent that was sending you to auditions and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I had an agent. I had a manager at one point. Because I had an agent in Dallas. And so my agent in Dallas got me an agent in LA.
Okay.
And I moved out to LA. My whole family, you're going to be like, you're crazy. But my parents, I mean, I had grown up doing this and my parents were super supportive, but I also had 4 siblings. And so my parents stayed in Texas, and I moved out to LA with like a family friend who was my like nanny kind of tutor. She was like 20 and I was like 15. And it was, I mean, that part was fun because I had a friend. We could have been reckless, but honestly, there there was a lot of TV watching and a lot of me like just writing sad songs.
Yeah.
So that's when I got really into songwriting because I was
Okay.
really fucking lonely.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I got really into songwriting there, and I was at Guitar Center buying a guitar. Yeah, I don't even remember where. It was like, I wish I could tell you which one. You would probably know. I feel
Probably
like there's
rocking
like two,
the
right?
one on the Guitar Center on Sunset, probably in Hollywood,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
And I ended up, I was with my mom. My mom was in town at the time. It's like my parents would come out all the time, but
Hmm.
my mom was in town at the time and had, my mom was very chatty and personable. And she was talking to somebody there, and she was like, my daughter is really into songwriting. And like, we want to get her some things to where she can record these, songs that she's writing. And like, do you know anybody who records people like who want to make music? And so she ended up talking to somebody just working at Guitar Center, and I think gave them her info, her to me. And then like 2 weeks later, my mom got a call from somebody being like, hey, I go to this Guitar Center a lot, and I heard your daughter writes music, and there's a few other people that young talent that I work with who I've kind of helped write with and co-write with and try to find opportunities with, and two other artists I'm managing. And so my mom was like, all right, let's talk. And so
Oh my God, that sounds like a horrible setup to a horrible
it's
trap.
not.
That's the
It's
stuff
actually
that
not.
happens in LA all the time.
I
It's like,
know.
no.
I think, luckily, like we had been around enough to know what was like really bad, right?
Okay.
And so yeah, it was honestly really innocent. I ended up doing a lot of co-writes with him, and I don't think he ever technically managed me. I just wasn't in a place where I felt like that was what I wanted at the time, but I ended up doing a lot of co-writes, and I met some other writers and producers through him and did a bunch of co-writes with them. And he actually had started placing, like, just as an opportunity for the other artists he was working with, he had gotten connected to a few independent licensing companies and started placing their music. And so
Cool.
he was like, once we write a song, I'm going to send it to people and see if they'll put it in a TV show or put it in a this or put it in a that.
Yeah.
And this was like right around when like Grey's Anatomy and One Tree Hill and all those shows were like starting to place independent music.
We actually just had Lindsay Wolfington on the show.
Nice.
Who was the music supervisor for One Tree Hill. But continue. Yes. Yeah. That the mid 2000s, early mid 2000s, like 2010s. That's
changed the game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, Grey's Anatomy, One Tree Hill, they were breaking artists left
The
and
OC.
right. OC, Alexandra Patavas. That's like
Exactly.
she's the rock star of that world. But yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So I got really lucky, and I had like a few songs placed, and my mom writes too. My mom had a few songs placed, and yeah. So that kind of just opened my eyes to that. Okay, I mean, I wanted to be an artist, but I wasn't really necessarily at a point where I was liking things where I was like, I love this for me. I want to stand behind this. It was almost like I was still trying to figure it out. And then I ended up moving back to Dallas, and I found an amazing producer in Dallas. He's very well known in Texas. His name's Salim Narala. Worked with him a lot when I was like at the end of high school, and wrote an album with him and came out with that. And I was still acting, and I just didn't think I wanted to go to school like for acting in a conservatory. I felt like that wasn't where I felt like I fit in when I was in high school. I felt like acting was something I did outside of school, and it was like a career that I always had. And so I wanted to be in a place where I could be acting, but I felt like I'd gotten so into music that I felt like if I could go to school for music business, that might be more helpful to me. And so I was kind of struggling, honestly, at the time. There were very few music business programs that I felt were like a good fit. Like I even applied to UT's music business program at the time as like a backup, thinking maybe I would, as a backup, I didn't get in, thinking maybe I would just like, I don't know, go to UT in the fall and then go to LA for the spring or something. I don't know what I was thinking. And they made me sight read for my audition. And I remember like walking out of there just crying.
Oh
And my dad
gosh.
was like, Winslow, everyone, like, God bless these people. And I hope that they're happy with whatever they do or want to do in life. But he was like, everyone who's in that program is going to be teaching. He was like, you're
Yeah.
not going to be a
Yeah.
teacher,
Yeah.
you know? And it's crazy. Like I had so much experience and that was what I was tested on.
Mhm.
So I kind of started to think, okay, maybe I should try film school because my sister went to film school and maybe I could direct and still do music and that'll give me more acting perspective. So I got on NYU's website to apply to Tisch for film school. And I saw the name Clive Davis and I was like, well, I know who that is.
Yeah.
And the program was only a few years old and I ended up, applying to the Clive Davis Institute and got in. And so when I was at Clive, I was making music and I was, in Clive Davis, they really teach you every aspect of the industry. That's their goal. It's like 360 music,
Cool.
Performance, songwriting, production, the music business side. And then they sort of like let you, pick a lane.
Mhm.
And I was making music and I was still acting. I had an agent here in New York. As soon as I moved here, I got an agent. And I just was like having a hard time. I felt like every time I was around music people, it was like I could only talk about music. Every time I was around acting people, I could only talk about acting. But at the same time, it's like I felt like if I went and worked at a label, I couldn't talk about. I was worried I wouldn't be able to talk about music, or if I worked in casting or in production, I wouldn't be able to talk about acting. And so I kind of felt really kind of boxed into like whatever I was like. I could only be wearing that hat at that moment.
Sure.
And then I discovered music supervision and I just went down this huge rabbit hole of like, okay, well, what are all the music, what are all the movies that I love? And what are all the projects that I love? And, what are all the TV shows that I love? Where did I think music was really interesting? And Randall Poster just kept coming up at every turn. And
Cool.
I think I even emailed Alex Patsavas to work for her at one point. I emailed like so many people
Sure.
and never heard back from like anyone. And then I ended up working at Bank Robber as an intern, amazing
The sync licensing company.
Amazing independent sync licensing company. Lyle, who owns it, is so fantastic. And I get to work with them now on this side of things, which is really fun. But I ended up working there. And then like my last semester in school, like I graduated early. So the summer before my last semester, I ended up getting a hold of Search Party. I like figured out that Randall Poster owned a company called Search Party for Advertising. And so I ended up getting a hold of them and they had a really new producer. Her name's Genevieve Vincent. She's an amazing film composer, actually.
Cool.
And she is an accomplished supervisor, but now she's really focused on film scoring. And at the time she was like the junior producer there. And I came in to interview for an internship and she was like, oh my God, we need help. We're like drowning. And she was like, you worked for Bank Robber? Okay, done, basically, which I was like, okay, that's all I needed to do. Great. And I literally have been there ever since. So I think because it was like its own lane, I was really able to kind of hit the ground running and take the things that I loved from, being a huge film and TV fan.
Yes.
And knowing what I know about having been on set from commercials. And then also knowing everything I know about composition and, and about music history and about, editing and, production from a music standpoint and kind of marry that into one. And kind of, I don't know, I think it kind of like merged all my skill sets to create this new superpower.
Cool. That's great. And it's
kind
funny
of a long
because
story, but
no, but it so clearly illustrates how it led you right here. And this seems like the perfect position for someone like you who has been on both sides of the acting side, the music side, yes, your love of film and music and all of that. So that's really cool. It seems, but people who would want to get into music supervision, it seems like the natural step is like you did, find some company, someone who's working in music supervision, whether it's on the licensing side, whether it's on, whatever side. And then, you said you had an internship at Bank Robber. Was that your first in or was it? a
Yeah, I
job?
mean, I had interned other places doing other
Okay.
things. Like I interned for like doing A&R. I had
Yeah.
interned um at a number of other places, but that was like my first sync and
Cool.
supervision internship. And then I started as an intern at Search
Sure.
Party, and then I've just
Mm,
now been there ever since.
right.
But yeah, I think personally, like we have people come to us all the time who are like, I only want to work in supervision. Like I just want to work for a supervisor. And while I respect people who know exactly what they want to do and
Yeah.
like have a really focused, clear mind about it. But I will say that like our industry is very tight knit, and
Mm,
all the time I have people asking me from labels and publishers, hey, we're looking for a really great junior person, or other supervisors being like, hey, I really need a coordinator. Like everyone's talking all the time, and just because
mhm.
you've been on one side doesn't mean you can't move to the other side. It's not
Yeah.
always super easy if you're maybe if you get bogged down in sort of like the bureaucracies of maybe being at like a major label for a really long
Mhm.
time, and then we're being like, okay, do I move to the other side, or what do I do? If you're
Right.
kind of used to a certain system, of course,
Mhm.
but that's
Mhm.
any job.
Sure.
That's
Sure.
any career anywhere, right? So,
Yeah.
for me personally, I would say like working for a supervisor, if that's really what you want to do,
Mhm.
obviously, like that's the goal.
Right.
But also there's departments you can work in at networks. There's like
Mhm.
you could work for Netflix on their team, or Apple, or
Yeah.
you could work for HBO. Like you could work for companies, or you could work for
Mhm.
individual people like Chop Shop, Alex Patsavis, or Search
Right.
Party, and Randall Poster.
Mhm.
Or you could work with sync licensing, like on that side, on the pitch side. And
Yeah.
to me, I think like it's always good to see things from the other side. I think like one reason why I think I have been a good music supervisor is because I have had the experience of being an actor, and I know what it's like to submit yourself for something and be like, what the fuck? Why didn't I hear back? I'm perfect for
Yeah.
that. Like, or
Yeah.
I delivered, like I worked so hard on that, and like I did everything that they asked for. And, they've said in the past that they love my work and they're thinking of me for the next thing. Like I've literally been told that so many times as an
Yeah.
actor,
Yeah.
that like I know what it's like for composers. I know what it's like for artists. Like it's when you get that thing, it's great, but the process is, there is a lot of rejection, and it can be
Yeah.
kind of exhausting, and it can be also just like confusing,
Yeah.
mentally being like, wait a second, like they said that they really liked it. It's like, okay, well, what you're not seeing is like the 20 people on my Zoom that I have to present this thing
Right.
to, and all the comments back and forth. Oh, that reminds me of this band. Like, didn't we do
Right.
that already? Or,
Oh
oh,
God.
that's too old. I think that that's speaking to like a different demographic. We really want it to feel new. Or,
Yeah.
there's so many. And it's so similar, like with acting, you have like directors, you have producers, you have the network execs. Like it's really not dissimilar. So that's
Mm,
one thing too. I would just say, like, for artists, like we're rooting for artists, we're rooting for
sure.
composers. Like I like to say, I work in the music industry, not in the
Right.
advertising industry.
Right.
I want to make artists successful. Like I
Yes.
want to make them money. I want them to
Yeah.
be able to keep making their art. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that perspective has given, or that those different experiences have given me a lot of perspective that I
Mhm.
think can, shine light on why things happen a certain way that they do. It's certainly like made me be more patient as an actor too, being like,
Yeah.
okay, now that I've seen it, what goes into it, I get it. It
Yeah.
doesn't
No,
make it
that's
easier, but
sure. No, and
it's
that's
mentally it can help.
yeah. Yeah, and it's great. And it's great perspective and great advice. I'm curious how because you're currently an actor. I mean, I saw you're working. Is it on a you're on a Shonda Rhimes show right now, or that's coming
Yeah.
out? And
I think it'll I think it'll come out this year.
okay,
I think
it's
COVID
already
kind of
shot,
stalled it.
right?
Yeah,
It's
I'm
wrapped
finished
or
shooting. Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
So, that's really encouraging and interesting. And I'd love for you to pull back the curtain a little bit because most artists these days are wearing multiple hats, doing multiple things at once, whatever your field is in. And it's cool to see someone as successful as you on this business side and employed in this, search party, doing, such a kick-ass job there, and like involved so deeply in that, but also still running an acting career. How do you balance that, and what is that like for you, switching those hats?
It's hard. Um, it's a challenge.
Mhm.
I think though, I'm so grateful for all the things that I do, but like, I will say when one is not going well, it's nice to have the other. Or when
Mm,
one is really frustrating, it's really nice to have the other. Like
cool.
sometimes it's really fun if I've had like a really bogged down business week and I get a tape or I get, a request for an audition or a tape or something
Mhm.
where I just kind of like can like let it fly and like let the wheels come off. That's just
Mm.
like amazingly therapeutic and fun. And if you do it right, it doesn't really matter if you get the job. The audition, like even just like going through the experience and
It's
the
like writing a song.
exercise. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It doesn't,
Yeah.
if you write a great song and if you're in the moment and it feels good,
Mhm.
then you get that sense of euphoria. And that's really
Yes.
why we do what we do anyways. Like,
Yeah.
obviously performing, you get it the most, when
Yep.
things are really clicking and like
Yep.
all of that. That's why people end up doing drugs because you're trying to replicate how like
Right.
high and amazing you feel when you're so in something. So,
Yes.
sometimes when I've had like a really bogged down business week, like it's amazing to pivot and be able to take a script and just like run with it and be somebody else. On
Mm.
the flip
Mm.
side, when I've sent in like a million tapes or gone to a million auditions and I get feedback like, she's amazing, we're thinking of her for next time. Or like, loved her not going her way. Or I just
Mhm.
hear nothing. And I think it's something that I did really amazing on. I mean, my managers are fantastic and they
Mhm.
always try to try to get feedback where they can. But sometimes, sometimes they're just moving too fast and you're just not going to hear back.
Right.
Or sometimes they already had someone in mind, and they just had to go through the process of auditioning other people just in case.
Yeah.
Um, and in those circumstances, I'm like, it's nice to be able to be like, you know what? I'm fucking kicking ass in my job and we're working on amazing projects. I feel really creatively fulfilled through that. And I
Mhm.
feel successful through
Mm.
that. And I have an amazing team who supports me and who I'm inspired by and all of that. So honestly, it's so nice to have both. I have actor friends
Mm.
who, especially right now with like, just with the state of the world, I have actor
Right.
friends who I talk to them and they're like, I'm auditioning in my bedroom every other day and I don't hear
Right.
things back. And
Yeah.
that's so hard. It's
Yeah.
exhausting. So,
Yeah.
as an actor, I'm so lucky to have, music supervision is something that I really love, just a
Mhm.
different muscle I can flex. But, I think to be honest, acting and supervising has been easier than making music and supervising.
Mm.
Making music is really hard, or has been challenging for me to like drop the judgment of it because I kind of judge music all day,
Mm.
not from a judgmental perspective, but I'm always thinking like, how will this work with this thing?
Right.
And so
Right.
sometimes it can be hard to go from like, how will these things work into this thing? And how does this music fit into this world? And then just kind of like everything goes away and you're like, oh, where do I start? Like
Yeah.
acting, at least I have somewhere to start. Like somebody, gives me a script or an idea or whatever,
Sure.
and then I can like
Sure.
take it and run with it. So it's definitely a challenge.
Mhm. Mhm.
But
No, it makes perfect sense, and I see this yin and yang that you're constantly dealing with, but also it can fuel one another and help you keep going. And it's nice to have something to turn to when one of them is presenting challenges or is frustrating. So that's
yeah.
really cool to see. Um, so this has been amazing. I have one final question that I ask everybody who comes on the show, and I'm very curious to hear your answer, especially now knowing so much about you. What does it mean to you to make it in the new music business?
So for me, I think if I can support myself creatively through
Hmm.
music, I never want to be in a position where I'm only on the business side. I love the creative side. I love working with creators. I love working with artists. So if I can support myself through being creative in music and support artists and their creativity through music, that's good for me.
I love it. Winslow Bright, thank you so much. This was great.
Awesome. Thank you. So fun.
Thanks.